Welcome back to the channel, everyone. So, been grinding on this thing and getting a lot of work done on sanding it and got everything prepared for some epoxy. So gonna epoxy the inside, the outs, I guess it would be kind of the inside of the, where the quarter panel sits, and also in here, got it all, roughly masked off. Should be fine. So I'm gonna go grab the epoxy and start mixing it up and throw you guys on the time lapse, and you'll see me freaking shooting some paint. Epoxy always lays down really nice. So now that I got this all painted, I didn't really time lapse the inside. You guys couldn't have really seen it. So now that I got this all painted, I'm gonna seam seal, these types of areas, and then I'm gonna try and shoot some black today. So once that's done, then I can stick this quarter panel on here. I did get to painting these. They're kind of the bumper hangers, and I think until I get fiberglass bumpers for this one, I think I'm just gonna use these brackets, even though they're super rusty. I did sandblast them, so at least the rust will stop. But time to get to seam sealing. What up? So back transitioning into the stew project. So what I noticed, I'm really glad that I noticed it, is that the gap on the bottom of this door was actually hitting. So the door, I think it actually sagged a little bit. So now that I have it in the right spot, I basically noticed that the quarter panel is too low, and I'm glad I realized that before I started buzzing it in there, because what needs to happen is I need to work up here a little bit. And funny enough, it's kind of been yelling at me. There is some space on the front here between the inner fender and the quarter panel, so it wants to go up to the right location, which is always good. So I think I need to work on this area up here, and then what I'm going to do, I have a screw hole going this way. I think I'm going to fill it in and then move it up, so I have kind of a locating feature up front, and it'll be able to kind of shift it up and get it in the right location, because it's about a 1/4 inch, I'd say, or maybe an 1/8 inch too low right now. So it needs to tuck in more up here. You can see there's a pretty significant gap here. I probably need to work this up a little bit more and also shave the quarter down a little bit. But lots of trial and error with putting these quarters on, and you want it right. So I'm glad I noticed that, and time to get to work. A little bit of shimming here and there, a little bit of pry bar, and I got the gap pretty much dialed back in. So was a little bit of a challenge to get a good door gap, but now I do have the door all the way forward, and the gap looks pretty good. So a little bit of gapitosis in here, but shouldn't be a problem to kind of work it in. And then a little tight back here. I think I might have put the wheelhouse on a little bit forward, but no big deal. So now I'm gonna work on getting these areas like down here drilled. It sounds like we may have a punch that might work, but drilled out and ready for some plug welds, and then use the spot welder on here, and then also on this area it's a little faster and a little bit easier, and then plug welds down through here, and then in these areas probably going to be plug welds and maybe a little bit of welding on the seam. Back on the old Nova project. So right now, one thing I'm doing is, while this is on here and I kind of have visibility on where, I want to fill in, because I am going to be putting a piece of plexiglass in here instead of having the normal glass, because you can see there's already like a nice edge. Shouldn't be too hard. So I made, a little template, as one does, for this area. So I'll be cutting this out of steel, and then, while we're fitting it up, while the quarter's on here, making sure it's good to these edges, and then probably tacking it in there, and then take the quarter panel off and fully weld it. And now that this is fitting pretty good, I got a good door gap, I'm going to start drilling out for the spot or the rosette welds in through here, in there, and also a couple back here. So one thing I am a little confused about, I think I've talked about this before, is this gap, but I think I'll get the tail light and fill it in right here and see, you know, how it fits, and see if I can't pull maybe the bottom side out and still get an okay fit and finish. Been a busy guy in the shop today, so got a bunch of holes drilled, you know, in the locations. Probably overdid it maybe a little bit, but it should be nice and secure. So, you know, I'm getting this pretty much mocked up. You know, gonna be welding it on here shortly. I do have to put some weld through primer on the back side of these areas. Obviously you want it protected and you don't want it to burn off that electronic coating they put on here. And I also made this, showed you guys, I had a template for it. So then what I'll be doing is putting a piece of plexiglass in here. It almost looks like it's kind of made for it, but you know, obviously there's a roll-up window, you know, stock, you can kind of see the provision over there. So definitely a lot of work, you know, drilled it out here and drilled it out all around here. So should be pretty much ready to go. And also some spot welds, you know, down in that area down there. I don't know if you can see it. So I'm going to take this off, spray it with that primer, and then you know, let it dry real well, and probably put this thing on tomorrow. I got to make sure that I push it back as far as I can, because this door gap, you know, before the screws go on, is definitely super tight. So definitely want to make sure before I get to welding it that that is good. But you know, looking good so far. So excited to get this on here. And once I'm done with this side, obviously I can get started on the other side. So all these holes, or you know, quite a few of these holes have been filled with weld now, looking really good. So I have been checking, you know, every once in a while, just shutting this door, you know, making sure my gap still is good. You know, it's a little bit too far in, but you know what, I'm not gonna really worry about it. This is a race car, you know, I gotta keep that in mind. So definitely close enough. So now what I'm doing is, before I get all those welded, I'm gonna start working on this bottom part down here, and I'm gonna get the spot welder out, and I'll put you guys on a time lapse as I kind of buzz all these in here. So that should be kind of cool to see. And then the next thing will be to put the trunk lid on, and I'm thinking I'm gonna grab the rear glass as well, just to place it in there and, you know, make sure everything lines up before we get too serious about all this welding, because this is definitely, you know, one of those critical areas as well. And then looking at the tail panel, I mentioned this already, but I'm thinking either I can roll this in a little bit and it should line up. I think it's actually kind of meant to be like that if I look at the other side, but push comes to shove, I can always undo some of these spot welds, bring it out a little bit. I don't even think it'll be that noticeable. And I need to kind of grind this area anyways. So making good progress, and then I'm going to do some welds in here once I get these ones in. And also got to weld all these in this area. So this was a little bit forward, I kind of had to bang it down. It's not perfect, and we'll see if I can even get you know, to the wheelhouse through these, but I think we'll be close enough. And when you are doing an area especially like this, you got to be really sure not to get too much heat in the panel, because you know, this is such a critical area on the car, the wheelhouse. You don't want to have a bunch of Bondo in this area. So, you know, nice and slow in that area. Maybe do one here, do one over here, you know, one up here, and take it nice and slow, and maybe have like a rag with some water on it to cool it down. So I'm gonna put you guys on the time lapse, and you'll be able to see this spot while they're working. It's kind of cool. Got this guy all welded in here, so it looks pretty good. Other than when you have a good gap, don't take a hammer to it. I freaking hit it with the hammer and then closed it up, but you guys can see, let me throw this wood here. I got it pretty much dialed in here, so probably take a little stone to those welds. You know, the weather stripping does go over there, but I do need to make a little thing for right there to tuck that weather stripping into, so shouldn't be a big deal. Now I'm probably gonna break this lower panel loose and go grab the tail light to make sure, you know, that it fits in here. I think when they did some work on this side, they closed the gap because this panel kind of comes in and down, or down and in. So I think when he did the skins on here, or maybe it didn't fit right from the factory, kind of pulled inward. So I'm gonna grab both the taillights and kind of compare how they fit. Got to make sure everything fits before you finalize all the welds. So that's what I'm working on. It's coming out good. I've made very good progress, so got this area all dialed in. Taillight fits in there about perfect. Got welds in here and welded this all up. Had to make a little patch for in here. Isn't all ground down yet, but I'm gonna keep moving forward and probably either move up here or start doing the wheel well down here. Also got quite a few spot welds left in here to do. They're actually called like rosette welds, kind of a interesting name. All in the details. So making this little patch to conjoin this guy to this guy, make sure that window has a good path to follow. Still got a lot of grinding to do, but the quarter panel is on here. So need to grind up here. Got that patch made up here, came out really nice. And everywhere is pretty much welded in here, other than, you know, down here, there's actually some welds that are inside. So might be a little challenge, but I'm gonna cap it off here. You know, I do have some extra work that needs to be done, but pretty much got this quarter panel on here. So super happy about it. Door gap, maintained pretty good, you know, about 1/8 inch there, or maybe 3/16. So we should be good to go. Trunk gap looks good. Everything lines up and, you know, should be good for a trunk seal in here. So next video, I'm probably gonna jump on to cutting off this other side. So lots of work to do on that side. Obviously, basically need to replicate it with the mini tub and outer wheelhouse. You know, I do have obviously some experience now, so I think the other side will go a lot faster. So really appreciate you guys watching and look forward to that next video. Sorry it's been a while for a little stew action, but we're getting her done. Thanks. Hey, thanks for stopping into the Bluebird Enterprises YouTube channel. If you like what you saw, give me a big thumbs up, and hopefully you're leaving with a bigger smile than you came in with.